All right, we are on the clock with Shane Hallam. All right, welcome back to the Onebar and Lupagus show. Special guest today in this episode of On the Clock, where we bring on draft gurus to answer all the draft questions because Shane, who is our guest, is much smarter than us. Shane from DraftCountDown. If you follow the top mock drafts, if you've been in the mock draft world at all over the last handful of years, you definitely know DraftCountDown, DraftCountDown.com. Links will be in the description. Shane, appreciate you hopping on, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well, though. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk draft. Things are really heating up, so it's a great time.
Hell yeah, draft countdown. I mean, they're one of the OGs. They've been around forever. You guys, I mean, you got mock drafts for like the next 3 years, don't you?
Yeah, I have a 7-round 2023 I just put out about a week ago, and then a 3-round 2024 mock that's a little bit older, but we'll come back to that after this draft. We'll come back and I'll probably launch a 2025 one in August. So,
oh man, I love it. I love it. You cannot get enough mock drafts. And your latest 7-rounder for this year was it last week?
Yeah, it just came out this past Monday. So,
all right. So definitely check that out. Like I said, links down in the description. It's pretty good to the Vikings. I would take what you got going on for the Vikings. Absolutely. But let's just dive into it. I'm going to fire off a handful of questions to Shane, mostly Vikings related, but also draft related as well. But let's start off with with pick 12. In your mind, coming from your draft mind, best case scenario for Vikings, not so much pipe dream, but just overall best case for the Vikings at pick 12. What would just be a beautiful situation for them?
I actually think whatever the pipe dream is probably pretty close to coming true. Like the Vikings, you aren't going to get Evan Neal. You know, you're not going to get the offensive tackle from Alabama. But I think there's a chance. The best case scenario I'd say would be Kayvon Thibodeau, the edge rusher from Oregon, falling to 12. Do I think that's probable? No. Do I think that's possible? I do. You know, the buzz has kind of been negative on him. I doubt we're going to see him work out at the combine. And I think there's going to be a lot of teams that just, pass on that pure pass rusher. So I think either him or I would say maybe Charles Cross, the offensive tackle from Mississippi State, would be a really good scenario depending on, with the new offense coming in. I think he's a kind of a more zone blocker, athletic left tackle. That would be good too. But I think best case, it's got to be Kayvon Thibodeau falling down to 12, and I think the Vikings would hopefully just scoop him right up.
Yeah, if it's Thibodeau, I'm getting very excited. Do you buy into? I mean, we see this every year. Some of these players like Thibodeau. I mean, 2 months ago he was 1-2, and all of a sudden he's randomly falling 8, 7, whatever. Do you buy into that stuff? Is it valid?
I don't, and I still have him at number 1, and that seems less and less likely by the day. But I guess I'll stick to my guns for a little while longer till the heat gets on in April. But I think he could fall a little bit, maybe out of the top 4. But I think, falling into that back end of the top 10 still seems unlikely to me, with the Jets at 4, the Giants at 5, the Falcons at 8, even the Broncos. I think there's a lot of teams that need that position and would take the athletic ability. So I don't quite buy it, but I've seen stranger things. And so I always say, never say 100% certain in the draft, because anything can happen.
Absolutely. Well, you're getting me excited, but let's go to the other side of the coin. Let's go to Christian Ponder scenarios. Let's go to worst case scenario at 12, just as far as the cupboard is picked clean and they just got to make some gross ass pick.
I think if the top 3 offensive tackles are off the board, the top 2 edge rushers, Thibodeau and Hutchinson, then Neal Ekwonu and Cross for the offensive tackles, and then the top 2 corners, I think if Sauce Gardner and Derek Stingley are not there, so that's 5, 6, 7, and then you're going to get Kyle Hamilton and that kind of thing. If these quarterbacks fall potentially, depending on what the Vikings decide to do, I think it's a tough scenario. I think that's where Now you're looking at the next tier of cornerbacks. Now you're looking at do you take a Jermaine Johnson, the edge out of Florida State, especially if Travon Walker, the D lineman from Georgia, is gone. George Karlaftis. I think there's still some good players there. Kind of the worst case scenario is that teams are bumping up the linemen and bumping up the corners, which we've seen happen before in the NFL draft. I think there is a possibility that the Vikings kind of needs could go higher than that pick 12 and could leave the cupboard bare to a player that probably has a later first round grade for them or an early second round grade. And you reach for that, you take the best player off the board, and that's where you can kind of get caught reaching, which often leads to the Christian Ponder type situations.
Would you say, so McDuffie's getting a lot of love from a handful. I mean, he seems to be a guy that's all over the place. Are you buying into that, or is McDuffie the Christian Ponder of cornerbacks this year? Is that just you're reaching because you need a cornerback?
I'm going to kind of hedge my bet a little bit. I think that it is a reach at 12. I don't have him rated that highly. I actually like his teammate Kyler Gordon a little bit more as a pure corner. Now, for certain schemes, and I think probably what the Vikings are going to run, you probably are going to want that high-end athlete more than some of the Vikings defenses in the past have, right? So I think it's going to be a shift in defensive philosophy, and I think that's what Trent McDuffie does bring to the table. So could he be this? I think he's going to be a great athlete. I don't think he's a great technical corner. Is that a player that could work with development? And you have, we've seen that work out, and guys like that become really good when, they probably weren't, they were pretty raw before the process. So I don't think it might not be terrible. I mean, you might make that pick and the day of the draft, you're like, I think it's kind of a reach. And then, 2 years later, you're like, wow, that ended up being a really good pick. But in the same token, drafting just an athlete at 12 for a position to me is not a smart thing to do. And I would really want a player in the top 15 that's shown they can be a complete player already. That's not Trent McDuffie. So that's kind of my thoughts on him there.
All right. Remember, check out Shane's 7-round mock draft at DraftCountDown.com. Spoiler alert, he does have us taking Kyler Gordon in round 2, which I enjoyed quite a bit. Another big need for the Vikings, interior offensive line, center and guard. Obviously Linderbaum's the guy in round 1. If they don't get him, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, is there a guy in round 2, round 3 that could actually be a day 1 starter, or are we just kind of screwed if we don't take him in round 1?
Center wise, it is not good. This class, a 2022 class, great. A ton of depth everywhere except center. I don't have another center graded out as a top 100 pick other than Tyler Linderbaum. So I think if you don't take him, maybe there's some guards that could play center, but really haven't. I mean, that's an issue. But I do think in terms of interior lineman, a guard, there are some good ones. A couple we saw at the Senior Bowl. Cole Strange out of Chattanooga is a guy that's probably going to go round 2, round 3. A smaller school prospect, but is more of a technician, gets some good leverage, really good upper body strength. Like, I think he has more of a complete profile, played some center at the Senior Bowl, adjusted decently well. Probably shouldn't play that in the NFL, but I think teams are going to like him. And then I still really like Ed Ingram from LSU, just one of the best run blockers, more athletic than he gets credit for. And I think he's a player that could step in day 1 and be a starter. And we say day 3, kind of a little bit of a sleeper, I guess, because he declared early, so he wasn't in the All-Star circuit, is William Dunkel, as a guard from San Diego State. He had the highest PFF grade ever in terms of run blocking this season. He's 330 pounds. And I mean, San Diego State's offense was just run behind this guy. Like he's going to make a hole and they're going to run behind him. So he does struggle in pass protection. I think there's a little bit to go. And I think that's why he'll fall to day 3. But I think there's a lot of tools there to work with to maybe turn him into he already has some elite run blocking skills. And I think you can grow the feet a little bit to get him to a point where you like where he's at. So he's a guy to look out for in day 3.
William Dunkel. I am all over this guy. Check him out immediately, mostly because his name is fantastic, and I love late round interior offensive linemen. So speaking of not so much late round, but first, second round, who's a guy that you feel sleeper wise is not getting the love that he probably deserves?
Um, I really feel like when you look at guys in the kind of that top 50 mix that can outperform that draft position. Zion Johnson, the guard from Boston College, is a player who I think is a round one prospect now, is starting to get that kind of end of round one buzz. I think he is really, really good. I think he's a plug and play starter in almost any system. I think he can zone block. I think he can gap run. I think he does a little bit of everything really well. So he's a player that I think is underrated. And then my guy, I wrote an article comparing what I think his career trajectory will be to Cooper Kupp. It's Christian Watson, the receiver from North Dakota State, right? Had a huge Senior Bowl, kind of got his name on the map. But I wrote that back in early January. Like he was Trey Lance's favorite target, and I think in a lot of ways he made Trey Lance maybe even look better than Trey Lance was. Watson, 211 pounds, 6'4", and I think he's going to run in the low 4.4s. So big time athlete. I think he has a shot even to maybe sneak his way up into the top 50, maybe even round one. But he's a player. I think he could end up being the best receiver in this class when we look back in 5-6 years.
Wow. Ellis Gregor, if you're watching, a loyal viewer, is very excited to hear that. He loves him some Watkins. Let's talk quarterback. Just because the Vikings currently, I mean, Kirk Cousins is here. A lot of rumors. Don't know what the future holds. So, and really, I mean, when you look at a lot of the draft gurus out there, quarterback seems to be pretty murky this year. But who's your number one quarterback?
My number one's Matt Corral, the quarterback from Mississippi. I think that he has gotten a little bit overlooked because he was the only top QB not at the Senior Bowl, but great release, one of the fastest releases that I've graded out since I started doing this in 2004. And he has a pretty decent arm for how small he is. He can get the ball down the field, has a really pretty deep ball, really catchable ball. You saw a big jump in decision making from a sophomore season to his junior season. The big downside with him, he can run the football. He's an athlete. He's not Malik Willis, Lamar Jackson, but you can have some scripted runs and do some things. He does have a frail frame. You're scared of him getting hurt. He's had a couple injuries. That I think that's the fear of, can he hold up to a beating in the NFL? So he's my number one. But I recognize Malik Willis from Liberty has the most upside. Probably is going to be the first one drafted. When you have 4.4 flat speed and you're playing QB, like there's a lot teams can do. So we'll see what happens.
Desmond Ridder, you buying into this? I mean, you're seeing a lot more. He's most NFL ready. He could actually go in round one. Are you buying that?
Could it happen? Sure. I feel like when we hit this point in the season for the next 2 months, it's every quarterback that exists could go in round one. I mean, we had Davis Mills in round one talk last year, and Kellen Mond in round one talk last year, right? So I think we always get that. I think it's possible because he's probably going to have a good combine. He's a pretty good athlete, better than people think. But I don't think he's the most NFL ready. I think that's actually the issue, where his accuracy just is so inconsistent. But I think in round two, if you didn't take one, he's sitting there early round two. I think a team like Atlanta, Minnesota, could be a consideration.
So always love comparing previous drafts to this draft, especially Vikings draft picks. If Kellen Mond were in this draft class, where would he fall as far as some of these quarterbacks?
So I think he wouldn't be in the top four for me. I think that these top four quarterbacks still grade out above him. His grade for me was pretty similar to Desmond Ridder. I think I have Ridder just a touch higher. So I would probably put Kellen Mond sixth in this class, very close to Ridder, and probably gets bumped up a little bit from in terms of draft capital from last year, I think, just because of the weakness of the QB class. But I think Corral, Willis, Howell, Pickett are definitely above him. And I think Ridder, you can make an argument as a prospect that Mond and him are pretty close.
All right, deep down, I wanted you to say number one, but I knew it was not going to happen.
So it wasn't that close, but
I'll take six. I'll take six. All right, combine time's coming up. Which guy is also just going to explode onto the scene? Everyone's going to be talking about him. That he's going to be the first overall pick. I mean, you see it every year. All of a sudden, guy just blows up. Bruce Campbell style. Who's it going to be?
Look, I'm staying in Minnesota, and I'm going with
Yes,
Dylan
boy.
Mafe. Yeah, I mean, I think he will be a first round pick after the combine. I think he's going to get that. He's going to get that kind of buzz that I've heard as low as running 4.44. Which would be wild at his size to run. And if that's the case with the long arms, like he's already not that far off. I think a blow up at the combine's good. Kind of a late round guy that I like is Eric Enzakama from Texas Tech, a wide receiver who another declare early, kind of got lost in the shuffle, but he's big, really good athlete. I think he's going to be kind of a buzzing name after the combine as well.
Boye Mafe. As much as I love hearing that he's going to be rising up the charts, I wanted him in round 2 so damn bad. But
might still be a shot, might still be a chance, hopefully.
Well, I appreciate the hope. Who's going to be the guy this year? Your guess, anyways. Who's going to be that Bruce Irvin, Alex Leatherwood? Who's going to come off the board before anyone just like, holy crap moment? Like, wow, that just happened.
So in terms of like the first round, I don't know if there's anyone that I think would be super surprising. Like I think we could see a guy like Trevor Penning, the offensive tackle from Northern Iowa, go in the top 6. I think that would be a pretty like, whoa, and people wouldn't expect that, but he's starting to get a little bit of that buzz up there. I guess that one's possible. I'll say more like a guy that I think could go round 2 that people have pretty late is Brian Robinson, the running back from Alabama. I think the NFL is going to like him a lot more than people think. They like that bigger back with a lot of carries that can carry the rock, even though I think his explosion is subpar. I think he's a player that could go higher. So those will be my 2, I guess.
All right. Once again, we got Shane Hallam from DraftCountDown.com. A couple more quickies for you, and we're going to let you roll. Guy, you mentioned Thibodeau could be a guy that maybe falls a little bit. Any other guys you see that could just end up slipping further than anybody thinks?
One that, I had in my top 10 not that long ago that I have outside of the first round is DeMarvin Leal, the defensive lineman from Texas A&M, who a lot of people came in after the season, number 1 defensive lineman. Going back and watching him, he's just not an explosive playmaking, sack kind of guy. And I think a lot of these defensive linemen from Georgia are going to rise up above him. I think he could fall even to late round 2 and maybe be a steal there. I think he will, but he's probably one of those guys I think will fall a little further than people think.
All right, I got to sneak in 2 more. You mentioned Georgia, Jordan Davis. Any sort of range you see that guy? Is he a surefire first rounder?
He is not. So I think there is a possibility. I'd say odds are he'll go in the first round. Someone's going to pull the trigger. He's such a good run blocking big guy with that can move a little bit. And if he does well at the combine, then I think definitely. But I think round 2 is a real possibility because teams want 3 down nose tackles. That they want the Travis Jones from UConn of the world who can do all 3. They can rush the passer, they can stop the run. Jordan Davis can stop the run. I mean, that's what he's doing in the NFL. And it just depends how you value that. So there's a shot, early round 2. I think there might be a lot of teams that would scramble to get him. We've seen a lot of bigger defensive linemen that people have, oh wow, great college careers, fall to round 2 because they can only do one thing really well.
All right, final. We love ourselves some bold predictions on the Onebar and Lupagus show, whether it's 5 quarterbacks going in round 1 or 3 guards going in the top 10. But you got a bold prediction for us come draft day?
I got 2 because I think one's not quite as spicy, but I think the second one is. So first one's that no quarterback goes in the top 20. I think it's pretty guy. I feel like most people don't grade them in the top 20, but everyone thinks someone will take them. But maybe NFL GMs are smart enough to see through. And then super bold. I don't really believe this will happen, but I think there's a chance that Derek Stingley Jr. falls to the second round.
Wow, love it.
That yeah. Maybe if you have the Vikings again in round 2, then you'll be really loving it. But his freshman year was really good. I think he's gonna, if he work out really, really well, and that probably nixes my statement there. But He doesn't have great tape the last 2 years. And I think NFL teams, if there's any type of character issue or injury issue, anything like that, I think it is within the realm of possibility.
Wow, that's why we called him bold. I love it. And hey, it's the draft. Anything can happen. So once again, Shane Hallam, Draft Countdown. Links will be down in the description. Appreciate you hopping on, man. This is fantastic. Love talking draft. And yeah, thanks for hopping on, man.
No, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.